What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Clifford the Big Red Dog. So Clifford the Big Red Dog is the latest live-action adaptation of a children's series from the past. Earlier this year we ended up getting a Tom and Jerry live-action movie, which was not great, but yeah, it's always nice to see something from my past or from, my parents' past that maybe I was able to kind of start to be integrated into, brought to a new generation in the modern world with a lot of the different filmmaking techniques that they have today. I always love being able to see things brought to the modern age for a new generation. And so when I heard that this movie was being made, I was definitely curious to see how it was going to turn out. Of course, I don't have kids. I've talked about it here on the channel before. Not really a fan of kids. Don't want kids, don't have kids, but I'm a big kid at heart. And so I always love to be able to see anything that I had some sort of nostalgic attachment be brought to the big screen after many, many years. When the very first teaser for this movie came out, I was kind of surprised to see that there was such a negative reaction to the way that Clifford looked. I wasn't really sure what people expected from a huge red CGI dog. We knew he was going to be CGI, and if he wasn't CGI, then it was just going to be this weird, bigger, real-life dog that's just going to end up looking kind of goofy next to these other humans. You kind of have to go CG with a situation like this. It just is the only thing that makes sense. That's what I expected when they announced the film, and so when I saw that early teaser, I thought it looked cute and was very surprised to hear people literally calling it things like nightmare fuel. This film stars people like Darby Camp, Jack Whitehall, David Alan Grier, John Cleese, Tony Hale, and many others. There's a lot of popular faces in this movie. If you're a big movie fan, there's definitely a lot of recognizable actors in this film, even if they are only in there for a brief moment. But yeah, what I can say about this movie after having finally seen it, just got back from the theater from checking it out. It is also on Paramount Plus, so if you have Paramount Plus, similar to what they're doing on HBO Max, they have certain films that are releasing day and date on the streaming services as well as in theaters. But I actually just came back from the theaters seeing it with my mom, and we both had a really good time. We weren't there with any kids. There were kids around, but we were just there as two adults having a good time, and ultimately we had a good time with the movie. I found this film to just be a really cute, wholesome film that I think kids are really going to enjoy, and it's something that I think that if you're somebody like me who grew up with Clifford the Big Red Dog being around you, whether it was with the books or the animated show, I think you'll be able to enjoy the film on a nostalgic level. Plus, there are some fun things and funny moments throughout the course of the film that I think parents will enjoy as well. With that said, on the way out of the theater, I was at a dine-in theater, and the exit's in the very back. There was a couple that was sitting there. It looked like the girlfriend was having a good time, but the boyfriend was dead asleep. And so, yeah, on the way out during the credits, she had a smile on while she was on her phone. Maybe she was laughing at something else, but this dude was dead asleep. So yeah, this isn't going to work for everybody. It's just one of those movies. I think if you see the trailer for this movie, I think you can tell instantaneously whether or not you're going to like this movie. But if you're a big kid at heart like myself and you grew up with Clifford the Big Red Dog, whether you're a huge fan or not, I wasn't a huge fan, but I definitely read and had some of the books. Anytime there was a book fair at school, or if I went to a Barnes & Noble and I saw some, I would definitely pick them up and read through them. And I watched plenty of the little shorts from the animated show from back in the day. So yeah, overall, I found this to be just a pleasant watch. And I think that sometimes is such a refreshing thing. It's always nice to go check out a movie that has, rich layers of narrative and story and message and great performances and this, big 3-act structure that's really awesome. Those kind of things are always great, and I'm always going to praise those kind of films here on the channel, and those films are the reason that I started my channel. But it's always nice to just watch a pleasant watch, and that's kind of what this movie was for me. It was very quickly paced. I do have some criticisms on it, but ultimately it's a movie for a younger audience that I think that adults like myself and my mom could definitely just sit back and enjoy. There were quirky little funny silly moments. It's a big live action cartoon, and ultimately, like, listening to the reactions from around me from both kids and adults, it seems like it's a movie that's going to do well with audiences, and it seemed like the kids who were watching the movie in the theater were pretty entertained and pretty engaged in what was happening, especially around the character of Clifford. And let's talk about Clifford really quickly, because he is the title character and he is adorable. I don't really understand, again, what people had to say about him at the very start when the first teaser trailer came out. I thought he was just a big, cute CGI dog, and that's what he is in this movie. When there's other things in the film that utilize CGI from time to time, those CGI moments are definitely a little bit distracting or a little bit more noticeable, maybe a little bit more cartoony, whereas even though Clifford is a big cartoony looking dog, it just works for the tone of the film. I've always been a fan of CGI. I've talked about it here on the channel on many occasions, and quite frankly, I think if the CGI of the film really fits the tone of the film, then that's all that matters. It doesn't have to always look super realistic. It just has to fit the tone of the film that we're seeing right now, and I think that this movie definitely nailed that when it comes to Clifford. Not to mention, I was in love with the character. I'm a huge fan of dogs. I have a dog. He's sitting right there. His name's Charlie. I'm not gonna lie, I actually tried to sit him here on the couch with me to see if he would join me for the review, but he didn't want to. So he's lying there on the floor, and I love Charlie, and I've loved every dog that I've ever had in my life over the course of my 28 years, whether they were a dog that was right on their way out as I was growing up as a young boy, or a dog that I was actually able to spend their entire life with as I was growing up, and so I've had a lot of dogs in my life, and it's just been something I've been very, very grateful to be able to experience, is that bond between a person and a dog, man's best friend. And so in this movie, you have this young girl who builds this bond with Clifford, and I think that was executed really well. If you don't already know what this movie is about, I probably should have started this off with that, but you have Clifford the big red dog, who is not so big just yet, who comes in contact with our main character Emily, played by Darby Camp, and they build a bond, and the next day he ends up waking up being a ginormous dog. Emily wakes up to this huge red dog, and now over the course of the film, her and her uncle Casey, played by Jack Whitehall, have to go on this adventure to try to either protect Clifford at times or try to figure out how they can make him smaller again. And as things go on, we start to learn about the villain of the film, who's played by Tony Hale, who has this company that is essentially trying to end world hunger. And this is kind of a weird thing about the movie. You have this villain who's trying to end world hunger, but he wants to make food bigger. That's essentially what he wants to do. He wants to make food, or the production of food, bigger, whether that's the animals, the food itself, who knows. But he's kind of just your typical bumbling idiot, kind of mustache twirling kind of villain who, goes after Clifford. And it's just weird because here you got this guy who's going after Clifford. He's the bad guy. We don't want him to win, but his overall goal is for the ability to end world hunger. But he never mentions that to any of the main characters of the film. It's just kind of like something that we know he wants to do. I found that to be weird, like making the villain somebody who kind of wants to do good, but he's kind of going about it in negative ways. I don't know. I found that to be a strange thing, but he was just your generic villain in the film. And a lot of this film did feel generic. I want to make that incredibly clear. This film definitely checks off the boxes of a lot of animated and just young family films in general, younger audience films. This is definitely a movie that, has a very straightforward, streamlined narrative. It's not going for anything too deep, too rich. This isn't a Pixar film or a lot of the modern day Disney films, or just a lot of family films today that have like something really rich and deep in there for adults and kids. This is a more streamlined, younger audience film, but something that I think kids and adults can definitely enjoy. And if you're somebody like me who grew up with Clifford the Big Red Dog to some extent, I think you can definitely watch this movie and have a good time with it. But yeah, overall, I would say if my biggest criticism of this film would definitely have to be that I felt like the development of the kind of bond between Emily and Clifford was a little bit rushed, but once we get into it and once the movie gets going, you definitely buy into it. This movie has a really nice message of kind of standing up for yourself and being able to be bigger on the inside. And that's definitely something I really thoroughly enjoyed about this film. You don't have to be a big red dog to be seen, to be noticed, to be heard. I like the fact that they utilize Clifford and different things like the size of Clifford in this film to, tap into this message about, being able to be bigger on the inside, even if you feel small on the outside or small in the world, or maybe somebody that isn't really noticed in the world. I think they did a really good job of hammering in that message, and ultimately, I think this is a good family film, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap up my thoughts right here. So, Clifford the Big Red Dog is currently in theaters and on Paramount Plus if you have that streaming service. So yeah, definitely think it's a film that's worth checking out if you've never seen it before. The director I do want to mention real quick is Walt Becker, who's directed things like Wild Hogs, Van Wilder, Old Dogs, and one of the Alvin and the Chipmunk movies. So yeah, definitely a director that I've seen some of his movies and I've enjoyed some of them I'm not crazy about. But yeah, I think he made a very cute, wholesome film here for families of all ages, and I think this is a movie that's going to work with kids in particular. So have you seen this movie? Are you going to see this movie? Please leave any of your thoughts down below. Can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Hit that like button if you guys enjoyed the video. It really helps the channel out. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.